I'm repeating this, the Kasoma Farouk of Uganda philosopher on this. No one is coming. No one is what? The government is busy. Your family is busy. Even your friends are what? Busy. So it's upon you to liberate your what? Your slave. All together. Today we are putting a caveat on Napoleon Bonaparte. These are the original points on this question. So our question, account for Napoleon I's dominance of Europe in the period 1800 to 1810. So this is the great explanation. So we are saying Napoleon I came to power in France in November 1799. After overthrowing the Directorate government, he ruled as the first consul up to 1804, when he crowned himself the Emperor of France. And he dominated European affairs up to 1815, when he was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo and sent to exile in St. Helena on the South Atlantic. So we are saying Napoleon dominated the politics in Europe. So we need to know the key reasons that explains why Napoleon was able to dominate Europe. Number one, the establishment of a strong French army by Napoleon I. We are saying today Napoleon established a strong army. This army was used to defeat his enemies. For example, at one time, he had to fight against Austria. He had to sign treaties with a country called Britain in order to survive. So the strong army was used by Napoleon to fight those that were rising up against his what? Government. And this gave him an upper hand. And that's why he was able to dominate Europe. Then, of course, nepotism, the employment of brothers, relatives, and close what? Friends. It is said when he conquered areas, he used to put there his what? Brothers and relatives. One time, Joseph Bonaparte was put where? In Spain, altogether. So this was a strategy because he didn't want people to betray him. And by this time, it is this that helped Napoleon Bonaparte dominate Europe. Because it was not easy for his relatives to turn against him. Then the introduction of the continental system. Under the Milan and Berlin Decree, Napoleon introduced the continental system. This was a system. After failing to defeat Britain militarily, Napoleon designed an economic strategy where he refused the countries to trade with what? With Britain. And by this time, we are realizing that it is this that enabled him to dominate Europe. Because still some countries stopped trading with what? With Britain. And this gave Napoleon an upper hand to dominate Europe. I can say, though later the continental system created problems for people, but at least for some time, it helped him to dominate Europe. Then the weakness of alliances of the great powers of Europe. We are realizing that the great powers of Europe were very weak in their alliances. Austria, Russia, we are very weak. They could not manage to fight and defeat Napoleon Bonaparte because he had strong armies. At a time when he realized that he could not defeat them, he made alliances with what? With them. So by this time, we are realizing that even at one time Napoleon married for political reasons because he had to marry Marie from Austria. The strategy was to get friendship with a country called Austria. Then we are realizing the spread and use of the revolutionary doctrines of liberty equality by Napoleon Bonaparte. At one time, Napoleon used revolutionary doctrines, liberty, equality, and fraternity, where he preached to the people that for him he was promoting the ideas of the revolution. That is liberty, equality, and fraternity. This made him a darling for so many people. People looked at him as a man who was solving their problems, who was promoting the ideas of the revolution. And this explains why he was able to dominate Europe, because all the European people had to support him at one time. Then the isolationist policies of Britain. At one time, Britain isolated itself from what was taking place in where? In Europe. Moreover, Britain was the lead one economically. When Britain isolated, this made Napoleon to feel strong, and he was able to dominate what? Europe. Because the only country was fearing Britain, and Britain was isolating its what? It is safe. And this explains why he was able to dominate. Then the superior French economy. Yes, isolating, because Britain wanted to solve issues at home altogether. Since Britain had issues at home, it was isolating itself. And in this kind of arrangement, we are realizing the superior French economy, where France, in terms of economy, was very great. And Napoleon was using the economic muscle to fight different what? Wars. That's why he was able to dominate Europe. Then in this kind of arrangement, the annexation of European states to France. At one time, he signed treaties. For example, there was the Treaty of Luneville altogether. In this kind of arrangement, Napoleon defeated the countries, and he tried to annex those what? Countries, like he had influence in Spain. Yes. And by even Belgium, this gave him an upper hand to dominate what? The whole of Europe. We are looking at the key reasons. Then the marriage alliances with the Habsburg ruling family of Austria in 1809. We are realizing that Napoleon married for political what? Reasons. He married Marie from Austria in order to be in good relations with a country called what? Austria. And this explains why at one time Austria was like showing that it was supporting Napoleon Bonaparte, but of course not all times. Altogether. Marie from Austria. Yes, he married Marie from Austria. From Habsburg meant from Austria. Yes? The what? Yes, he married Marie Teresa. Marie. No, it was Marie. She was Marie. Altogether. Not Marie Antoinette. Altogether. So in this kind of arrangement, this explains why he was able to dominate Europe. Then the reconciling of Napoleon I's government and the poor. 1801, at a time after realizing that in the civil constitution of the clergy, the French Revolution rose up against the Catholic what? Church. The man signed the Concordat with the Catholic what? Church. And by this time, it is this that explains why he was able to dominate what? To dominate Europe. Concordat, this was an agreement where he was willing to cooperate with the Catholic Church to get support from the Catholics. Because the Catholics were men and where? In Europe. Another one, the consolidation of power in France by Napoleon. We are realizing that Napoleon consolidated the power in where? In France. And he based in France to control all other European what? States. Then Napoleon's successful wars against the second and the third coalitions. It is seen at a time when countries made coalitions. Napoleon defeated countries like Austria. This gave him an upper hand over countries, and he managed to dominate what? Europe. Then they believed that Napoleon I was invisible. It is seen, some people believed that Napoleon was what? Invisible, that he cannot be defeated. I can tell you in his statement, you remember he said, a normal man lives for only 2 what? Hours. A woman 4 what? Hours. And a fool 8 what? Hours. This gave him an upper hand altogether. Because people believed that Napoleon was what? Was what? Invisible. And he was able to dominate Europe. So friends, you need to understand, our mission says, I'm repeating this, the Kasoma Farouk of Uganda philosophy on this, no one is coming. No one is what? The government is busy, your family is busy, even your friends are what? Busy. So it's upon you to liberate your what? Your slave. All together.